Welcome back.
That's right. We are ready to move on and make another block in our Floral Felicity quilt.
We are still on zone 1, moving on to the second block, Coneflower.
And if you look at page 9, that's where it says sew the blocks. And the first one was Iris we made. So now it says Coneflower block, page 24. So find it in your book.
Grab your handy zone 1 bag.
What do we know about Coneflower block? Jenny gets those things out. If you look at the cutting, the curves, cut the curves, you can see that all the words, the main words are in orange text. So we're going to be using the orange lines on the Wonder Curve ruler. There is a little tip box right there. I left my glasses over there, so
I'll grab them.
So the tip box says, if desired fabric print direction for cutting is suggested by arrows. So we did put some arrows in the cut the curve section. You know, I kind of didn't really think about it when we made that. It kind of just, it worked out. It was okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, sometimes we want to know what direction. So that is there.
Oh, look at that, really took up a big part of it.
Wow, that's all. Okay.
This is a big one. All right.
Okay, so our first step is to actually cut the curves. And remember how we're doing this? We are going to use our Wonder Curve ruler and we look at the page and it tells us to cut shimmer A. And remember, it's back on pages 6 and 7. So we're gonna go back to pages 6 and 7 and cut curves.
We could show them a close-up of this page real quick.
Yes.
Okay.
Shall we?
So there's our Coneflower block, and we are working on this one right here. And as you can see, orange lettering, orange lines on the Wonder Curve ruler.
All right, we are ready to cut curves. So we are looking here. We're just working with the zone 1 section. And we're going to reference back here pages 6 and 7. Okay, we are going to start right at the top. Let's go down the list. We're working with petal 1, and it is this Abby Dawn fabric. And it says we need to cut 6A. So if you refer back to your reference pages 6 and 7, remember we're working with the orange lines this time. So align the 4x4, that's for A and B. We're just doing A. So these are 3.5. So let's stack a few and align it with our solid orange line. And just make it look like the picture in the book. And it does not matter if they're right side up or right side down. So here's our orange V, solid orange V. We cut in our curved slot. This is your discard. And we are going to make 6 of these. So here's 4. So let's do 2 more. And you're going to get good at cutting several of these at a time. And it's really going to be a fast way for cutting unique shapes. So there we have all of our 6A's cut. So we'll just set those aside. And now we're going to use the same fabric. We're going to make 4 C and D. And it says to cut them right sides together, or you can be wrong sides together. It just wants 2 up and 2 down. So I'm going to keep these how they came off the bolt. I've got 2 facing up and 2 facing down. And this is C and D. So if we look in our book, we're back here using the orange dashed line this time. And we made these in our last block, but we did it with the blue lines. So now here is our orange dashed line. we just put it right here in this V part and then cut in your slot. And we are keeping both parts here. So let's separate and make sure that we have what we need. So we have these two different mirrored shapes right there. If we look back on our page, yes, we keep all 8 of these pieces. So we'll set them aside. Now we are making twist C, and we need 2 down and 2 up. So if we look, we have 4 pieces here, how they came off the bolt. I'm just going to keep them all stacked. And we're just making the C, and the C is the dashed orange line again. And we just line it up in the V. So hopefully you're starting to see that there is some pattern here, that we're just using orange lines today. So line it up, cut in your slot, discard, and these are your C pieces. So let's separate those and match them up with our other C's. Okay, now we're down to petal 2. Petal 2 is this brown camel color, and we're starting with the shimmer A and B. Now we have not cut shimmer A and B yet. So if you look at your book, it says shimmer A and B is a 4" by 4", and you line it up in the solid orange V. So this is going to cut both an A and a B from the same square. So line it up in the solid V, cut. It does not matter if they're right side up or right side down. And now we have 2 A's and 2 B's. And are we keeping both parts? Yes, we are. And how do I know that? I'm looking at the graphic right here, and it tells me 2A and 2B. Now for the next one, we're cutting a C and a D, and we're going to keep all the parts. And we cut 1 up and 1 down. So I have 1 up and 1 down. This is the C and D. So if you remember, that is our dashed orange. So line it up and cut. Okay, those are ready over there. And then our next one is twist C. Twist C is, we need 8 that are 2 1/4 by 4, and we're going to have 4 up and 4 down. Okay, so let's just separate these because I wouldn't cut all 8 anyway. So let's do 2 piles. And I could have just separated them, but here again, I want you to see the process. Okay, so let's cut the C. Let's cut these 4 are right side up. So line it up in the dashed orange V. Cut in your curved slot, discard, and keep these. And then this set, we are going to cut right side down. So line it up in the dashed orange V, cut in your slot, and now we have the mirrored image. Okay, moving down, we are doing the center fabric now. And this says make 2 A's. So we have already cut A before. We line it up on the solid orange V, and we cut in our curved slot. Doesn't matter if it's right side up or right side down. Here we have those. Now we're just moving down our list. This is our stem fabric. This is, we have 4, and we're going to cut 4 D's. So we need them 2 up and 2 down. So I have those. Let's go like this. And remember, D is the dashed orange. So line it up with the dashed orange V and cut in your slot. And notice on this one, we are not keeping any of the C's. So we don't use them in this block. We're only keeping D. There's no way to cut D without cutting a C. So we don't always use the C when we have to cut a D. So put those in your extra pile because we found out that sometimes we need those. All right, now we are on leaves. So for leaves, These are, you should have 12, 3.5 by 3.5, and we are going to cut 12 A's. Doesn't matter if they're right side up or right side down. I'm going to go ahead and cut 6. So if you have a sharp blade, the more you get used to using your Wonder Curve ruler, you'll get more comfortable cutting more layers. And this fabric is a teeny bit directional with that background print, but we found the last time we did this that it didn't matter. They were going to end up going different directions regardless. So we're going to go ahead and cut A here. Discard, oops, I just didn't push in one spot right there. Okay, so there's 6, and then we're going to do these. Let's stack them up nice and neat. And we're using the solid orange V. And now we are going to cut our backgrounds. So just that fast, we have cut many, many curved pieces. And this is really the amazing use of our piecing tools, is how fast you can cut unique shapes. Okay, so this is going to be, we have 10 4 3/4, and we are going to make 20 B pieces. And we cut B in our iris block. So if you go back to your page 7, look at the orange part. Here we are going to cut our 4 3/4 in half diagonally. And this is how we get 2 out of 1 piece of fabric. And then turn it, line it up on the 4s. So with orange lines we use the 4, and with the blue lines we used a 5. So here we're using 4. Trim off your points, and then make it look like the pattern. Rotate. We're looking here, and line up the orange box corners, and then cut in the curved slot. And this is B. So I'm going to go ahead and work through that because we need 20 of these B pieces. So you can just watch and kind of remember, all right, do I know the next step? Seems like as we have taught this cutting a few times, people forget to trim off the points. So that's kind of so after you cut it in half diagonally, don't forget to trim off the points. And so we line it up on the 4s and trim the points off. And again, we are showing you a lot of details on this first zone cutting and sewing, but the more zones we sew, you're going to get very familiar with these shapes, and you won't need to watch all of these details over and over. You will already know how to do this. Okay, just the last 2. Cut them in half diagonally. And then, because I only have 2 fabrics, I'll just stack those. Trim off the points. Rotate the block. Line it up in the orange solid box corners and cut. All right, we just cut 20 B shapes, and that was really fast. Okay, we have one more set of curved cutting. We have 10 2 3/4 by 4, and we are going to cut, we're going to make D shapes, D and C. So let me just stack this so I have a few in each, and we need 5 of them right side up and 5 of them right side down. Okay, so keep it how it came off the bolt. I'm doing C and D, so I know it's the dashed orange V. And I'm keeping all of my D's, but I'm only going to keep 1 cut right side up and 1 cut right side down of my C's. So those are done. And then the rest of these, when I cut them, I just need to make sure they're right side up, right side down, and only keep the D side. I'm going to go ahead and cut whatever I have left. I have 6 pieces left. And I know I'm going to square up this block, so I would say stacking them exactly precisely is not the most important thing here, because I sometimes let them like be a little bit wonky. Okay, I have all of my D pieces and C pieces cut. Okay, we are all cut, all our curves are cut, and so next step is to go ahead and set up the sewing, which pieces get sewn together. Okay, here we have laid out all the curves, and how do we know how to lay them out? When you look at your pattern, the next step is sew the curves. So lay out the sets. And here the only thing to watch for is to make sure you've got the right number of pieces in each set. And then when you lay out the C and D's, which are these, you know, make sure that you have the right C and D together. If it doesn't look like a rectangle, then this is the wrong C for this D. So here you can tell this looks like a rectangle and this looks like a rectangle. So that's just a little check for yourself. Okay, we will be sewing these. You can chain sew, and we're going to just take one set at a time. We'll start with the first one, and we're going to sew the A and the B together. And we're just going to chain piece this whole set, and then we will do pressing. So we're not going to show you every one of these. We're going to show you a set of A and B, and then we'll show you a set of C and D, both directions.
Okay, it's sewing time. We are going to start sewing all of our AB pieces together. And just like we did in the first iris block, all of the sewing is the same as far as sewing with the convex on top, concave on the bottom, and that bottom piece is going to extend 1/4 inch. And I have a bunch of AB pieces here, so I will eventually chain sew those together, but I do want to show you, these are the CD, correct? CD pieces, okay. So let's show you how to sew this block. So there's your block. Again, we're going to flip that on top, convex on top, concave on the bottom, and this one we're going down about 1/4 inch. We talked about hand placement in sewing when we were sewing the first block, the iris block. So if that is something you haven't watched yet, go back, watch that, and you can see how Helen sews, and then this is how I sew. So
and try them both, because one will definitely feel more comfortable.
Definitely. Now we're going to sew these 2 pieces together. Again, flip that over, convex on top, concave on the bottom. That bottom piece extended about 1/4 inch. All right, and then I'm just going to continue sewing all of my pieces.
Okay, so we're going to chain piece all of ours. You know, this is a good chance for you to pause and go ahead and chain piece all of yours.
All right, welcome back. We have sewed all of our pieces together, and we have them in 3 different stacks for square up. So when we pressed towards the A, pressed towards the A, and for these we pressed towards the D.
The C.
The C, yes, sorry, the C. But sometimes we'll press towards the D, and we did that because this is part of the stem that goes underneath your flower. So if we press towards our focus, it sort of helps that kind of, you know, pop up and take focus onto that and not your background pieces. Totally personal preference. You can do it however you want, but that's how we did it. All right, so we're ready to square up. And so we are on step number 6, and we're going to square up all of our AB blocks. So I'll show you a sample on how to square that up. And we are using, because we used the orange lines on the ruler, we are using the orange dots. So we're going to lay it out just like it shows you here in the book. We're going to place the Wonder Curve ruler on top, and the orange dots sit right on my curved seam, right here and right there. And then we are squaring this up to a 3 by 3, so I just want to make sure I have fabric all the way around that. We're going to trim 2 sides and then rotate the block, lay the Wonder Curve ruler back down, and line up the trimmed edges on my 3-inch lines, and then trim the other 2 sides. Now let's go ahead and square up the CD blocks. And looking at my graphic, we are going to lay out the block just like that. And these get squared up to a 1 3/4 by 3. So we're going to place the Wonder Curve ruler on top, and the seam sits at the 1.5 inch mark, and then the orange dot sits at the curved seam down here. So again, this will be a 1 3/4 by 3. So we'll trim the 2 sides, rotate my block, and now line up those trimmed up edges on my 1 3/4 and my 3-inch line, and trim the other 2 sides. Now let's do the other CD block that's facing the other direction.
And I went and grabbed a Sharpie. So,
Oh, good.
And this is just this might help you.
Yep.
So sometimes we can't remember over and over again what we're lining up to. So here it's the 1.5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you just make a little mark, so now that like helps us like, okay, so the 1.5 is on my seam, and then the orange dot here. So if that helps you, great.
And we would have done a 1.5 there for all the other ones. Yep. And we mark our rulers all the time. And if you ever like, well, great, now I have this permanent mark on there. Actually, no.
Magic. You can just get it wet again and then just wipe it off.
And it comes right off.
And you can wipe it with a piece of fabric or scrap or cotton ball.
So we're going to mark or line up that mark now that we made at the 1.5 on my seam here, and then the orange dot is on the curved seam right there.
And all that information is in the pattern, you know, what marks you're looking at.
And then we just line it up at the 1 3/4 here, and then the 3-inch there. So there we have those pieces and those. So we are going to square up all of our blocks, and then we will do layout. If you want to use your Sew Square 4 to square up any of these blocks, it's not as big of a ruler. You can, it's easier to handle. We mark this ruler as well. So I put a little gold dots, kind of hard to see, but I put them like you can actually, if you want, place the Sew Square 4 on top of your Wonder Curve ruler, and you can put those little dots right where the orange dots are on the ruler. And that's for squaring up your 3 by 3 inch blocks. So then you just line that up. Those little dots will sit on my seam. And then you line it up on the 3, the 3. All right, so we have squared up all of our blocks, and now we are on step number 8, making the half square triangles. So this is where we take the 3 6 1/4 by 6 1/4 background and the 3 6 1/4 by 6 1/4 teal leaf fabric. So following the directions, we're going to draw a line on the wrong side of this background fabric, and I just have a purple erasable or disappearing ink pen. I'm just going to draw a line right down the center from corner to corner, and then we are going to layer that on top of one of our focus, and we're going to sew on each side of this marked line, and then we'll go from there. All right, so we have sewed on each side of that marked line 1/4 of an inch. You can kind of see a little bit better on that side. But now I'm going to place my ruler on top, and now I'm going to cut from corner to corner. And we're going to press, and we're going to press the seams open. And we're going to square this up. So we purposely oversized these blocks so that you can still square up your block. And what's fun with the Wonder Curve ruler is we have added this small dotted 45-degree line. So that's the first thing you want to do, is line that 45-degree line on your seam. And we are squaring this block up to a 5.5 by 5.5.
Oh, you need that? Yes, you do.
So we'll go ahead, and once that's, centered down that seam, go ahead and trim these two sides. Rotate, and then line up those trimmed up edges on my 5.5 and my 5.5, and trim the other two sides. And we will do that for the all of those blocks, and we will have 6 in total.
We have all our half square triangles made and squared up. So now we are on assemble the block. Assemble the block is, we're going to work with this in sections. And this block, the sewing was really straightforward, but there are a lot of blocks. So let's just lay it out. And the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to make 2 columns that go on the sides of the flower. So let's just lay it out how it shows in number 9. And we're going to start with ABs. So on your graphic, just look. So our first one is we have AB, and then we have it with this petal number 1, and then our next one down, we're going to have an AB here, but it's with petal 2. So here you're just looking, look at the direction of the curve, like that wouldn't sew and match up right. So just look at that, how the curve sits. Right here we have a CD, and this needs to be one that looks like this. It's petal 1, petal 1 here and petal 2 here. And then we have a AB that is petal 1, petal 2. Here we need our other fabric. So you have some fabric that we haven't sewn with yet, but it's been pre-cut. And here we have a 1 3/4 by 3, and then we have one here that is a CD, and you can start to see our petal take shape. So we're working down. Let's see, we also need let's scoot these up a little, a 3 by 4 and a 4th here. So go look at all of your fabrics, and you should have one that is a 3 by 4 and a 4th right there. And then this column down should have a 1 3/4 by 3 here. And then we need 2 CDs, one going each direction, so here and here. And then we should have a 1 3/4 by 3 right here. So this is one of the 2 columns we're making. And what we're going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead, we're going to sew these in columns. So meaning that we're going to sew this together. So in order to sew this together, I need to first sew these 2 and then sew it here. Press all the seams open. Sew this one, press all the seams open. and then we're going to sew together, press that seam open. So we're going to do this one, then we're going to work on the other one here, and then we're going to come back and show you that we'll have both of them done. All right, we have gone ahead and sewed our 2 columns together. You can look at the back, see that the seams are pressed open, and they should be the mirrored reflection. So if you lay one on top of the other, all the points meet. Okay, so that is step 9. Now we're going to do the center of the flower. So again, we're just laying it out how the pattern shows. So we're going to start with our ABs here, and then we should have a 3 by 3 in the middle, and then our 1 by 8 here, and then we have some other pieces here. So we start with a CD, and then a brown spacer, and then a CD, and then the opposite. So then we have a CD here, and another spacer. Whoops, not that one, this one, and then a spacer, and then this one. Okay, and then we have a 3, 3, 3. So we have a 3-inch and a 3-inch, 3-inch, and then we have 2 brown CDs right here. So here, and then again on this side, and then these will be with our stem. So here and here. And if you like puzzles, like we like puzzles, I think quilting is a lot like a puzzle. Okay, so now on this one, we are actually laid out, and it's going to be easiest to sew in rows. So you're going to do row 1, this one is already a single piece, row 3, row 4, row 5, press all the seams open, and then sew the rows together, press the seams open. All right, we have sewn together our petal section. So we went ahead and made the center, and then we sewed the sides on that we had made previously. And you can see on the back how we have pressed our seams open. And now you're going to set this aside, and we're going to make the stem section. So the stem section, it starts on step 12. And the first step is to sew your little CD pieces to the 3 by 8. So we've gone ahead, we sewed those, pressed that seam open, and then set these aside. And now we're going to lay out step 13. So in 13, this is where we do our half square triangle leaves. And again, we're going to make these in 2 columns. So you're going to make a left side and a right side. So let's lay out the left side. And then here's where your 12 little AB pieces are. And so lay these out. This gives you the nice curve end to your leaf sections. And Jenny and I played with this a lot the first time, like, you know, how much are we stressing about the directional fabric? We couldn't keep everything exactly the same. So now we know that if you want to, you could at least try to keep your these two, and this is totally personal choice. So I'm just going to lay them out, and then if it feels like something needs to adjust, those AB pieces are really easy to adjust. So here, you know, we'll put this, so these lay out. I think it adds a lot of interest when things aren't always exactly the same. So that's not my thing I am stressing about in quilting. Okay, we have 2 more side pieces that go here. But the great thing about quilting is that it's quilter's choice a lot of the time. Okay, so on this one, The directions say to sew together, forming 6 columns. So here, this is a column, and then you're going to sew these together. This one, here. So sew 6 columns, and then press seams open, and then sew 1, 2, 3 together, and 1, 2, 3. So let's do that, and then we'll come back together. Okay, we have our leaf section, stem section sewn together here, the left side and right side. And so we've worked all the way up through number 14. Now on 15 here, we are going to make room for our stem. So we are going to trim a 1/4 inch off each side. But what you really want is for this to be 9 inches wide. So we are going to measure, because when you sew a bunch of seams, you know, okay, so this is 9 and just, it's a little bit shy of 9 1/4. And I'm just measuring with my Wonder Curve ruler. Okay, so I am going to line up here. So I'm going to just pick a line on my mat, and I'm going to put the, make sure you can see this, I'm going to put the left edge here on an inch mark. And then we're going to use a long straight edge and line it up with the mark on the mat. And so I am trimming off everything here. And in some places it's a little less than 1/4, others it's right at 1/4. So we want this to be 9 inches wide. Okay, so left side. And now this side, let's turn it because we want to do our inside again. So here's my edge. So let's line up. So I'm on the 14 here all the way down. And you can see I'm going to trim off this edge. So hopefully that gives you a good kind of idea for trimming a 1/4 inch off. So measure this rather than measuring a 1/4 inch because you want to keep 9 inches. Okay, now we are at the let's sew this together stage. So our next step is to lay out your stem piece. So it's 1 by 18 inches. We're going to sew this in and then press the seams towards the stem. And then we're going to add the flower parts to the top, okay? Okay, check out our coneflower. We went ahead and sewed the stem in, and then when we were sewing that in, we did pin, you know, you sew your stem on one side, and then when you add this other side, go ahead and pin that so that these will line up nicely. So pin, 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 and then we pressed towards the stem, and then we pinned this intersection here and sewed the top on the petal part to the stem. It looks great. One more thing you could check at this point, the pattern tells you that right now this should be 18 by 29 1/4. So go ahead and just check it so that you know, all right, yes, we're at 18 inches and 29 1/4. Excellent. If yours is a lot bigger or too small, adjust your seam allowance. So kind of rethink, like maybe put on a different foot or put a mark on your, put some seam tape on your sewing machine so that you can be more consistent. Another public service announcement is clean your machine. We just took a 10-minute pause and cleaned the sewing machine. So if you can't remember the last time you did that, this is your reminder to clean and oil your machine. Okay. And some video.